Hello, today we're going to talk about the game Strange New Worlds, a game of galactic exploration from GameTime Games in 1978. Thought I'd try it out. It looks like it's a fairly simple game, and it's a diceless game, but it captures some randomness like using cards. But, it seems, obviously it's got a sci-fi theme, so I thought I'd, check it out. First of all, the artwork is nice. I like it. It's very, 70s-ish. It's nice that it's got the actual signature of the artist here, original art. Definitely seems to evoke the theme of exploring on a new planet, and I guess they're looking at something in the distance, some discovery. They have some detail in their suits here. This must be like a depth measurement device of their digging, I guess, in some kind of armored vehicle here. So it's a lot of interest. My copy's a little bit worn, but I think you get a sense that it's nice art. There's nothing on the back, but gives a little bit of theme on the side here. Explore unknown worlds, encounter alien races, and colonize hostile planets in this game for ages 8 and up. As far as written theme, there's really hardly anything. It does, just give a paragraph. Strange New Worlds gives players interstellar spaceships placed in an unknown portion of the universe where they must explore, conquer, and exploit new galaxies and colonize enough new planets to show profit. The number of players is from 2 to 6. The actual theme is there's various planetary cards, which are here, and these are some images of the cards. But when you explore a new planet, a lot of unique cards with I think good art. It's black and white, but it's very, I think, well done. Yeah, it's unique and gives you a sense of what's on the planet. We'll go into that in more detail, but I do appreciate the unique art on the cards as well, and this is where you get your theme. As far as components, first of all, the rule book. It's actually, it's black and white. It's actually only 4 pages. First page just, shows some of the cards, and then we'll get into detail on it. Rest of the components, there's 2 decks of cards. There's crew cards, which, show different crews that you purchase or, So we'll show those in play. Big and unique artwork, well done. Then there's these planetary cards. Whenever you discover planets, you get these unique cards. Some examples there. I won't show all the examples because they all seem like they're all very unique cards. So I don't want to give away all the discoveries you make, but it talks about, gives them flavors on the planet, and then what crew are involved in, assessing those. Then the other components, it's not a huge number of counters, but there's enough definitely to give it interest. There's these are the total components. These are the unique ones. So you have planetary control markers. These are galactic credits, which is an interesting way of handling money. So first of all, there's the spaceships, and it can be 2 to 6 players, and they show unique art of different interstellar spaceships. Then there's galactic credits, which is the currency used, and like I said, they're in these counters, and all the counters are this thickish kind of counter, which I always like, thick counters. They look like they're a little bit rough when you kind of cut them out, though. So you get a little bit of kind of edges on them there, but I think the counters are well done. So the currency ranges from 100 galactic credits to 500 to 1,000 to 10,000, and I'm glad they put some detail on that to add some realism. It's kind of, I wish the numbers were a little bit bigger, but I do like the detail they have on the counters there. And then there's planetary systems markers. These indicate, these are each of the planets on the board. So obviously 24 of them, and they all have unique names. And these correspond to the names on the board. Black hole counters, there's 4 black hole counters. And these correspond to locations on the board as well. And these are planetary control markers for each of the individual, 6 players. There's 7 of each of these. So then the board, so thick cardboard with the art, printed like right on the board. It looks like it doesn't have like edging or anything like that. But I think it's fine, and it folds up and from 4 sections to fit in the box, of course. Size, it's pretty big. It's like 23 by 23. I think for the art, the art is pretty good. So the sections of it are, so the outside ring this is where you play your cards for the different planets. That's to show which player controls a particular planetary system, the play of the game's unit counters except for the ships themselves. It says no rules. So the inner square is a portion of the universe showing the location of galaxies, which at first I thought that was a mistake. I thought they meant that these should be solar systems, and then these would be unique planets within solar systems, which would make more sense, but they actually do intend that it's galaxies. You find 1 planet per galaxy, which, given our current understanding of things, I think it's quite ambitious that they're jumping from galaxy to galaxy rather than, star to star. But at least they're consistent in what they're saying there. And it does, I guess, it does show a point in time where at least what they thought in terms of what space travel was, maybe at least for the developers of this game. So each of these galaxies then has a name that corresponds to a planetary system, and those names also correspond to on the edges of the board here. And then there's a bank area, a place where you put your planetary system cards, and a place where you put your crew cards. So that's the components. So go through the rules here. Strange New World is played in turns. Each player completes his turn before going to the next player. During a turn, a player may do the following. If the player begins the turn on a planetary system that he controls, he may pick up any credits that have accumulated on that system, buy new crew cards from the deck, transfer crew cards from his hand, the ship, to the planet, and vice versa, move his ship, colonize or have combat if the ship completes the move, or on another planetary system. If a player begins a turn on a planetary system that he does not control, or in space between planetary systems, he may only do 4 and 5 as outlined above. So move his ship or colonize or have combat. Movement. Ships move in 2 manners. They may be moved by using the hyperspace jump or by a more normal movement. In order for a player to use a hyperspace jump, a player's ship must begin the turn on a planetary system and end on a planetary system. When a player elects to use a hyperspace jump, the following procedure is used. The player first announces that he will move by making a jump. He then takes the planetary system marker from the box on the outer edge of the game board that corresponds to the planetary system that a ship is currently occupying on the map portion of the game board. Box is turned face up. The name of the system that is on the marker is where the player must move his ship. This movement takes place immediately. The counter is left face up, and any players that jump from that system in future turns move to the named planetary system. Players may never use a jump when their ship begins its move on a black hole. If, when making a jump from a system, the marker that is turned up is a black hole marker, that player must move his ship to the indicated black hole. Normal movement is accomplished by moving the ship 1 point in any direction on the map portion of the game board. A point is a planetary system, a black hole, or one of the light blue diamonds printed on the map portion of the game board. When a player is using normal movement, his ship may never move more than 1 point per turn. Players may use either jumps or normal movement in a single turn, but not both. Colonies. If a player's ship ends its movement on a system that he has not previously colonized or explored, the player may attempt to colonize the system. If the system has not already been explored, the player draws one of the planetary cards and reads it to himself. If he is able to and wants to colonize the planetary system at this time, he shows the card to the other players and plays the necessary crew cards or credits. After completing this, he places a colonist crew card along with one of his planetary control markers in the system's box on the outer edge of the game board. This indicates that the system belongs to the player and any or all rewards belong to that player. If a player, after examining a planetary card, cannot or does not wish to colonize the system in question, the player takes the planetary card he has drawn and places it face down in the system's box on the outer edge of the game board. If other players visit and wish to explore this system in the future, they do not draw a new card from the planetary card deck. They must use the one that's already in the system's box on the game board. Rules of colonizing. In order for a player to colonize a planetary system, he must be able to comply with the instructions of the planetary card. If the card were to say that a science officer and an engineering team are required to colonize the system, then the player must play those crew cards from his hand. These cards must be available in the player's hand, ship, and they cannot be played from another system that the player controls. Cards played in this manner are discarded face up to be returned to the unused portion of the crew card deck as play proceeds. If a planetary card says initial followed by a sum of credits, then the colonizing player must place that sum of credits in the bank, as well as discarding the appropriate crew cards in order to colonize the planetary system. Once conditions of the planetary card have been met, the colonizing player must place at least one colonist crew card in the system's box on the edge of the game board. If all these conditions are met, then the player has colonized the system and may place one of his control markers into the system's box. Note, there is no limit to the number of types of crew cards that may be placed in a planetary systems box on the game board. Once conditions of a planetary card have been met, that card, unless it offers a bonus to the controlling player, is discarded from the game's play. If it offers a bonus, it is kept in the appropriate system's box. Income from colonies. Once a planetary system has been colonized, it produces income in the form of credits. All colonized systems produce a minimum of 50 credits per game turn for the controlling player. If the system contains a bonus card such as plus 100, then that system would produce its normal 50 credits plus an additional 100 credits for the owning player. All income produced by colonies is placed in the system's box at the beginning of the player's turn. In order for a player to obtain the credits, he must move his ship to each system that he controls that contains credits. As a ship reaches a system that contains credits, the controlling player may take those credits and place them on his home system. Any player may spend only the credits that are on his home system. He may not use credits that have accumulated on a colony until he's moved his ship to that colony and picked up the income. The credits produced by a colony are placed in the system's box at the beginning of the controlling player's turn. Note, once a planet has been colonized and banned for any reason, the requirements for colonization need never be met again. In order for a new player to colonize a previously colonized system, all he need do is move his ship to the system and place a colonist crew card in the system's box. Note, when a planetary card calls for specific types of crew cards to be used in colonizing the system, these crew cards, once played, are discarded back to the crew card deck. Combat. If a player's ship ends its movement on a system that is controlled by an opposing player, he may elect to have combat and try to win the system for himself. Combat is conducted in the following manner. Each player selects from the crew cards that are currently available to him. The player who controls the system will use every crew card that is in the system's box for combat purposes. The player who is invading the system may only use the crew cards that are in his hand on the ship. The invading player need not use all the cards in his hand. but he must declare which ones he's using before the results of the combat are known. If the results are unfavorable to the invader, he may not change his mind and add more crew cards. Resolving combat. Each crew card has a number printed on its bottom. This number is the combat value of that particular card. To resolve combat, players add up the totals of their combat value of the crew cards involved and compare the totals. The player with the smaller total loses all of the crew cards that were involved in the combat. They are discarded back to the crew card deck. The player with a higher total loses a total of combat values that are equal to the number of combat values lost by the losing player. The winning player then discards these cards back to the crew card deck. If the winning player cannot lose exactly the same number as the player with a smaller number, he must lose additional combat values. If the losing player occupies the system that was being invaded, all of his crew cards have been returned to the crew card deck, and his control marker is returned to his home system. The invading player may now place a colonist card on the system and a control marker to indicate that he now controls the system. If a system that contains accumulated credits is won through combat, then the winning player may collect the credits that are on the system at the time of combat. Buying crew cards. When players desire to obtain new crew cards, they must buy them from the bank. Players may only buy new crew cards during their turn and before they move their ship. Players may only buy new crew cards when their ship is located on a system that they control. To buy new crew cards, a player announces to the other players that he's going to do so. He then tells the other players how many cards he wishes to purchase. Crew cards cost the buying player 100 credits each. These credits are placed in the bank by the buyer before he sees crew cards that he has purchased. After paying the correct sum of credits to the bank, the player then draws the appropriate number of crew cards from the deck. These cards are placed in the player's hand. Note, a player may never have more than 4 cards in his hand at the time he moves his ship. If a player has just bought 1 crew cards and he now has more than 4 in his hand, he must transfer enough to the system that his ship occupies so that his hand contains no more than 4 cards. A player transfers cards from his hand to a system at any time during his turn, either before or after the movement of his ship. Remember, a player may never have more than 4 cards in his hand at the time of movement. He may only transfer cards to or from a system that he controls, and he may never end his turn holding more than 4 cards in his hand. A player may never buy more than 4 cards in a single game turn. Winning the game. If a player controls 7 systems at one time before all of the planetary markers have been turned face up, then that player wins the game. If no player controls 7 systems and all of the planetary markers have been turned face up, determine the winner in the following manner. The players total the number of credits that they have either in their hand or on their home system or colonies. They then add an additional 100 credits for each system that they control. The player with the highest total is the winner. So here's the initial setup. I'm doing 2 players. I'm doing yellow against green. So first of all, you take the planetary markers, little planetary markers and black hole markers, put them face down, shuffle them, and then you put 1 in each of the small boxes to the left of the planetary system. So in each of these boxes. And then you select 1 spaceship and 7 planetary control markers. So I'm doing yellow and green. Each player selects a home planetary system. So yellow is going with Velcrom, which is here, and green is going with Janus 6, which is up here. Then you shuffle the crew card deck and you'll face down 4 cards to each player. So these are 4 cards from the crew card deck. Each player receives 1,000 galactic credits, which I put in their home system. And then we get into play. So a few turns into it here, and I'll show you where we're at. First of all, yellow's been, got them right at their home planet. It's got perfect climatic conditions, got a couple colonists there, because they ended up with a lot of colonists initially. They were able, the first turn they ended up doing a jump, but they went to a black hole, so then they lost a little bit of time. I think the main thing about the black holes is the main thing about jumps is that you have a chance to go in the black hole, and that basically costs you time. That's why jumping is a risk. So eventually got there, and that only needed colonists. It didn't need anything else. But so he put colonists there, and he also kept some Astro Marines there for defense in case the other guy comes around. And they've been accumulating a little bit over a couple turns there. That's going to be on that planet. And then green, their home planet is normal life forms. Left some Astro Marines there for defense. And they did a couple jumps. They were able to go to Perseus, and so they didn't need anything unique to get there. Excellent farming conditions, so they dropped some. They didn't have any colonists to put there initially, so they had to buy some and wait one turn so that they got lucky and they were able to get a colonist, and then they put the colonist there and left some starred soldiers there for defense as well. And then they were able to jump from there to Darien, and here's where you show the jump locations. And so they're there now, and that required a linguistics officer, which they had, fortunately, and also they had to purchase another colonist to put there. So now they have 3 worlds, and yellow has 2. Then we'll go into a turn here. So the players go sequentially. So first of all, yellow will go. And the first step is to get your credits and then pick them up if you are on that world. So each of their worlds they get 50, so they'll add 50 here and 50 here. So that's their credits. And then they buy any new cards from the deck. So they're allowed 4 in their hand, and currently they have 2 science officers that's on their ship. So they want to buy a couple more cards, and they cost 100 each. So they'll purchase a couple crew, and they get colonists and an engineering team. So it's good they have a colonist on their ship now. So they have 2 science officers, a colonist, and an engineering team on their ship. And you can then transfer crew cards from the ship to the planet or vice versa. And they're currently on Taurus here. They just had dropped off some there, so they're not going to be dropping off anymore. Then they move their ship. And they're going to do a jump, so they'll see where Taurus jumps to. And Taurus jumps to Nistrium. So Nistrium is right here. Instead of jumping, they could go, one space, and it would take them, 3 to get there. So they're doing a jump. So they found that jump, and now they see what is on Nistrium. And they are fierce Zala warriors. Requires Astro Marines and minus 100 initial cost. Is up here. And they don't currently have Astro Marines, so they can't get that planet at this time. And there's no combat. And then green will go. They'll collect their credits. They get 50 for each of their worlds. On Perseus. So now they can buy some more cards, and they have space for some because they only have 2 right now. They dropped a couple off on the planet just before this. So they'll spend 200 and get a couple more crew cards. And they get Astro Marines and a medical officer. And I'm playing against myself, so I'm showing these, but actually they wouldn't know what's there. So the Astra Marines and medical officer. Unfortunately, they didn't get a colonist, so that's a problem. So that might limit what they can do here. And then see if they want to transfer any crew cards. And they will, since they got some Astra Marines, they'll transfer them down, and they'll take the well, they already have a linguistics officer, so they'll transfer the Astra Marines down, so that there's a little more forces there for defense. And then movement, they'll jump from Darius and see where it goes. Well, that's interesting. That one jumps to Janus 6, so that jumps right to their homeworld. So that's really handy for gathering credits anyway. So they might as well jump there and then bring their credits and put it on their homeworld. So they'll jump Janus 6, and they can deposit this in their homeworld treasury. And then colonizer combat, and they can't do either. So that's Strange New Worlds from GameTime Games from 1978. Hopefully that was enough to give you a bit of a sense of it. I actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would. It's pretty simple to play, but there's a lot of interesting factors to it. You have to choose, strategy, if you can take chances in jumping, or do the safe route and move, but then you may not get there as quick, and you have to decide if you're going to be moving resources or exploring. You have to figure out if you're going to defend your worlds or expand, and use those resources for landing on other worlds that need different combinations of teams. So there's a lot going into it, actually. Components are okay for the time. Yeah, I'm glad I got that. So I'd recommend it. If enough there to keep it interesting, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Thanks a lot.